Welcome in the presentation of the ERIS paper. The ERIS is the Evolving Returns Integrated System. So, in this paper, I examine three neurogenetic hybrids to resolve various issues of the modern portfolio theory. At first, to examine the investor behavior. Secondly, to define the depiction of behavior in the stochastic differential equations to describe the price efficiently under the new trends of the chaotic dynamics by Charlie statistics on entropy into fractal market hypothesis. Thirdly, the selection of the optimal classifier between 22 modular, 22 Jordan-Hellman, and 22 generalized feed-forward hybrid models to optimize investment portfolio. Now, the portfolio selection in its second phase elaborates advanced aspects of risk in further higher moments, such as volatility, hyperkurtosis, ultrakurtosis, hyper-ultrakurtosis, as I have published in 2019, 2017, and it is analyzed in this paper. At first, the portfolios are evaluated from the feasible set, according to my past presentations from 2006 and on. And furthermore, the efficient frontier of maximum return under minimal risk in a utility function according to what I have published. The novelties of these papers emphasize on the first step, which offers the solution to the second step, providing a further approach on the evaluation of the optimal classifiers under an advanced analysis supported by a novel intelligence system, the ERIS. 22 modular, 22 Jordan-Hellman, and 22 generalized forward hybrid neurogenetic models are evaluated in different topologies that detect the optimal classifier model of portfolio allocation. So this research examines the preferences and the behavior of investors in advanced moments on profits and risk exposure. Secondly, extends the isoelastic utility as an advantageous tool of behavioral finance. Develops, thirdly, Markovitz's portfolio theory with hidden information of fundamentals to exclude the bias and detect healthy assets in the fractal market hypothesis and chaos dynamics in finance. Examines the efficiency of MDNs, GELs, and GFFs hybrid networks, concluding on the optimal classifier for high frequency trading, and creates a ERIS integrated system in portfolio selection. Now, the behavior of investors is characterized by a higher degree of irrationality, which is affected by emotional biases, and thus it requires nonlinear modeling of higher complexity to describe it. The most turbulent times of global financial crisis are described by short investment horizons, as in the fractal market hypothesis we discussed before. Now, Christoph Fleck in 2013, given that returns descriptions alone are not normally identically and independently distributed, and the market failure of efficient market hypothesis has a different approach. As the investors are more sensitive to their potential losses, the Subrahmayam paper describes, I model the investment process incorporating the new trends of Charlie statistics that describe fractals in the chaotic environments of the stock markets in the fractal market hypothesis. The investors allocate their utility expecting a reasonable return as the fear of loss produces problematic decisions. They usually are risk averse or risk neutral. Higher moments describe the investor's hidden patterns on the implied utility function of the hyperbolic absolute risk aversion. Thus, advanced moments further than the fifth of hyperskewness are used, as I have published in the past, under this model, where lambda n is the accuracy of investor preferences to risk, depending on the behavior. ALN is the constant of investors' profile, one for rational, different than one for the non-rational. Xi, the value of return, I in time t. So the isoelastic utility, a unique Hara function of constant relative risk aversion is for the risk averse investors of this model. If the lambda is between 0 and 1 and after 1 to infinite, plus infinite, then it is this ratio of wealth. Else it is the logarithm of x when lambda is 1. W is the wealth, lambda is the measure of risk aversion. Now, according to my past paper, this indicates that the Markowitz model can have a broader alternative relaxing is essential assumption on the normally distributed prices. The initial convex problem of the quadratic utility maximization, according to Markowitz in 1952 um, uh, benchmarking paper on effective market, is the minimization of the variance of the return of the market of the portfolio, the investment portfolio. Margen and Parpas in 2009 incorporated higher moments, and thus the optimization function became the lambda of the variance minus 1 minus lambda of the expected return. So, the return of the portfolio is the linear function um, of the of the stocks and their proportions. So, regarding the chaotic dynamics, Charles in 1988 introduced the relative entropy TRE, which is a generalization of a Kullback-Leibler relative entropy to non-extensive systems that describes complex systems with nonlinearity, long-range integration, and long-term memory effect. The stock market research on the Challis generalization of the key LRE was implemented by Challis et al., Kajouri, Rak et al., Kozaki, Queiroz, Biro, Zhao, the most recent in 2021. Now, the model, according to my past research, the model that could describe is a linear function of further higher moments based on the previous models. At first is the family of the risk parameters, starting from variance, kurtosis, hyperkurtosis, ultrakurtosis, and so on. And then is the family of the return, according to expected return, skewness, hyperskewness, ultraskewness, and so on. These are the models I have created and published in the past. So, in terms of computational intelligence, the modular hybrid neurogenetic networks are the basic classifier in this paper that is comparatively analyzed to the Jordan-Hellmans and generalized forwards in various forms. Now, the modular networks and their hybrids are a special class of the MLPs, processing their input with several parallel MLPs, and they recombine the results. They create a structure within the topology which will foster specialization function in each sub-module. The number of hidden layers in the network topology can be identified in 4 modular topologies, and in all the models it is applied the linear forward form without bypasses of the signals. In contrast to the MLP, modular networks do not have full interconnectivity between their layers. This is the modular network. This is a modular hybrid with genetic algorithms only in the inputs. We can have several variations, but this is the variation I selected. And in this one, I also have cross-validation in all the layers. Now, we well know the cross-validation is a very effective method, and it's using the 11 hybrid models. The other 11 are plain neural nets. The GFF networks are a generalization of the MLP, such that connections can jump over 1 or more layers. After a number of layers is given, the MLP requires significantly more time of training the epochs than the generalized feed-forward network containing the same number of neurons. The network will construct an MLP in which each layer fits classic example of this, and it is the two-spiral problem. An MLP can solve any problem that a GFF network can solve, but the GFF often solve the problem much more efficiently. The important inputs demand a multiple training on the network to define them and thus provide a minimum error. This is a GFF neural network, and this is the GFF hybrid network with genetic algorithms in various layers. Here, I give you a model with genetics in all the layers, inputs, hidden, and outputs. Now, the Jordan-Hellman networks belong to the further family of the partially recurrent neural networks. This family have sorry, it has a few recurrent connections and that are introduced. Um, that includes two types of neurons, those that behave as inputs, and the context neurons or state neurons are remembering past actions, taking outputs from a layer delayed by one step, internal states, function, and a certain memory of the partial recurrent networks. The partial recurrent networks family are the Jordan networks, the Hellman networks, and the multi-step recurrent networks. The Jordan network includes the context neurons and receive a copy from the input neurons. Here we see um, some variations of the Jordan network. The Hellman network have a context neuron that receive a copy of the network's hidden neurons, and these connections do not need to associate with any parameter. The number of the context neurons is the same to the number of the hidden neurons into a network. The rest activations are calculated using as the MLP. Now, the multi-step recurrent network has a feedback connection directed from the output neuron to the input layer, and the context neurons memorize previous inputs on the neuron. Here we see a single layer Hellman network and a multiple layer Hellman network on the right. So the Jordan-Hellman networks have four different topologies. I selected to work on topology one. Now, the ERIS integrated system is based on this software I present here, where it reads the fundamentals of the companies, select the best evaluation method, the best classifier per company, then implements the classification and defines if the company is distressed or not. Then it creates the feasible set, and then the optimal portfolio decides on the on the optimal portfolio. So it repeats until it concludes to the optimal solution. Now, the problem definition. The significance of further high moments has been displayed in the past, and it is introduced in the form of the expected utility of the return of the investor. But the problem here is that we have a very superficial analysis on the happiness of the investor. We conclude that the happiest investor is the one who receives more profits. But we ignore many other things. We ignore the volatility of the market, because today's profit can be tomorrow's huge losses. Okay, and it can be massively. It can happen massively. So the utility is a very relative idea. So this formulation is transformed to the minimization function described in equality 14. The non-convex form of the problem demands robust heuristics for the solution. So the rumors about the stock or the stocks, the manipulation, the cooked accounting books has higher moments of investment risk. Thus, if we implement the chaotic dynamics for a riskless bond, then it could be described by the quality 15. R is the risk-free interest rate. Now, regarding the risky stock prices, they follow the stochastic differential equation as Zhao et al. Have described in 2021, where the differential of the price of the stock is given by this stochastic equality in number 17, where M is the expected return of the um, price of the stock. Sigma is the standard deviation, and so on. J is the random variable of the jump amplitude within the stock, and so on. We also use a Poisson process with strength lambda. Lambda U delta is the average growth by the Poisson jump, and also a standard Brownian motion, which is defined on the probability F as a winner process. Now, the stochastic differential equality has the solution that is given in equality number 18. It's quite demanding in terms of processing computational processing. The random variable omega satisfies the quality 19, and PQ omega tau is the maximum Charles entropy distribution for non-exhaustive statistics. The model describes the volatility clustering and long-term memory phenomena of asset returns. The return, of course, has this form of 20. So number 12, quality, is the optimal utility function on this model. And it is used to in finance papers of Wang and Sang on 2018 and Loukeris 2021. Quality number 12 is this one. Okay, to remember it. Oops. To remember it, this one. Okay. So the data of the model, as we know now, most of the systems use the price based on the problematic assumption that the efficient market hypothesis incorporates all the trends on the stock. But this is wrong because manipulation, fraud, and other illegal activities may occur in the market, and many investors may be deceived. So that's why I use for many papers the fundamentals. And that's why I use data mining and AI to infiltrate fraud. So we have 16 financial indices according to the theory of Curtis of his paper of 1976. For example, earnings for interest taxes to total assets and so on, working capital to total assets and so on. And a 17 index of initial classification by bank executives, test set was 50%, quite high, but I did it for security reasons, and training was 50% of the data. Now, the concluding remarks on the results were that the generalized forward hybrid neurogenetic network of 3 layers with genetic algorithms in all the layers has superior classification overall and performance superior to all the other models as well in a low computational times. The second rank was given the hybrid Jordan-Hellman of 1 layer with genetics in all layers and better classification converges. The hybrid modular of 2 layers and genetics layers was ranked third. And also the ERIS model consists of a novel approach to resolve the portfolio selection problem in a variety of optimal classifiers. Here are the results. Table 1, we see the optimal models of the 3 neural families I have worked on. As we can see, the GFF had a superior classification, a superior fitness of the model to the data in terms of the R parameter, low error, low Akaike, which gives impartiality to the model, that is gives a sign of a reliable model, and a low training time of 2 hours and 44 minutes. Training and test time. So the second was the Jordan-Hellman network with also a better classification, but slightly worse fitness to the model, but it's almost close to one. So you cannot say it's much worse than the first model. They're almost identical. It had half the hour of training required to the first model. Also, it had a higher level of impartiality in terms of the archaic index, but a higher mean square error and all the other terms of error, the percentage error and the net mean square. Also, the MDN had inferior classification, but in a very good level. Lesser error levels, um, high correlation, high fitness of the model to the data in terms of R, low Akaike, but a huge time of 18 hours training. So here are the results on the modular hybrid networks alone. Here are the results of the Jordan-Ellman hybrid networks alone. Okay, and here are the results of the generalized feed-forward hybrid networks alone. So, thank you for your attention. If you have your